Hi, I'm Elizabeth Licata, Troy-Bilt's Gardener-in-Chief. Today we're going to talk about creating garden structure. We're going to talk about making a garden that has a different surprise waiting around every corner. We'll talk about making arbors, trellises, ponds, even a bar. And to do that, we're at my friend Gordon's garden. You would never know it, but behind these hedges lies one of the most inspirational and beautiful gardens you'll ever visit. I'm here with the man who created this garden, Gordon Ballard. Now, Gordon, I'm kind of assuming this was not here when you moved in.
No, that's true. When I bought the house 17 years ago, I had a clean slate and a lot of grass in this yard.
So why did you change it?
Because I had all the grass, I decided I could start doing some gardening around the perimeter of the property up to the foundation. And then I looked around and thought, gee, there's a lot of other areas that we could still garden in this yard. So slowly but surely, things came together.
I'd first like to talk about this pond because as soon as you come in, you hear this pond and then you see it, and it's so spectacular. So how did you do it?
This pond takes up a space approximately 30 feet by 40 feet. It's a very large area. First we laid it out and we had to remove the sod, and then we started digging different layers out. And we took all that soil that was in the hole and moved it up on top of the berm, so we could create different levels in the front yard here and also have a nice cascading waterfall, which creates that great sound. Because of the size of this pond, EPDM rubber probably would have weighed about 500 pounds, and that was told to be very hard to roll out and move around. So we used the PVCE. Of course, we lined it with rocks also. Very important to line it with rocks and create all that different space so you step back, you're not able to step right up to the pond.
What sort of advice would you have for gardeners who want to create a more modest pond?
I would go a lot smaller, obviously. This is a very large 3,000-gallon pond, maybe something around 500 gallons. You could certainly buy a preformed tub, which is very easy to work with, and you can just cut the hole to match that. You don't have to worry about the liner and all the stone and everything else. However, that's not something you can overwinter your fish in. And I think that's important to stress, that if you want to keep your fish out over the winter, you have to go much deeper, 3.5 to 4 feet deep. You have to have a bubbler in the pond or some kind of heating element to keep the ice free all winter long. Otherwise, you will lose all your fish.
What if someone doesn't even want to dig a hole for a pond? What sort of options would they have for a water feature? We
would call that the low maintenance water garden. That would be an above ground tub or an above ground glazed pot of some sort. And you can certainly put a bubbler in them too. If you wanted some kind of water sound, you could put a little fountain in them as well.
Well, I do think that regardless of how big your pond is, I think the sound of the water is one of the most important things about it. So don't feel like you have to have a huge pond like this with all these different plants and fish. As long as you've got that nice running water sound, I think that adds a lot to the ambiance of your garden. A pond is really a beautiful thing to have in a garden. But did you know that you can actually create rooms in your garden just like you would have in your house? Gordon, explain how we're looking at a garden room here and how it was made.
Okay, well sure, Elizabeth. If you look around, there's no hard walls here, obviously, but there's plants that actually create a structure of a wall. So this large buddleia or butterfly bush here creates kind of the entrance wall as you go in. And right behind me, we have all this great black fennel, which also creates kind of a screen. And then you go under the umbrella and you're surrounded by plants. So you have this roof over the top of you with the umbrella and all the plants surrounding you and the fence on the other side. And it really feels like you're in an outdoor dining room when you're sitting in there.
Now, in terms of seating areas, Gordon, what do you think is really important? Where do you start from the seating area, or do you create the space first with the plants?
I think you could probably do either one, Elizabeth, but I personally thought of it all together at one time. I created the garden in a space and then made sure the table fit inside there as well. I think it's also important to point out, if you're going to create a sitting area in the garden, make sure you have a nice view, maybe a view of the house, maybe a view of a garden, or a view of your water feature. Wherever you site these areas in your yard, you want to make sure you're going to enjoy the views and the sounds.
The way that you've used every bit of space, you've got plantings, you've got seating areas, so there's beauty, there's utility. Could you talk about, for example, your fence there is interesting. You have some trellis work on top of the fence.
Yeah, that's actually removable trellis. So the fence is actually 6 feet high, which is usually to code in almost any town in the United States. But if you have a temporary trellis that you can slide into the top of that fence, that's legal as long as you remove it at the end of the year. So you're actually able to grow your plants up higher.
Another really important element I always feel in a garden is a beautiful arbor.
It's actually like a doorway into the next area of the garden, which is the back of the yard.
Gordon and I are now sitting in one of the newest areas of his garden. It's also one of the most important. This is Gordon's entertainment area. So, how would you even start to build something like this?
Well, this particular structure, I built a scale model of. And then from the ground up, we built this wonderful wood structure. Now, it is made out of hemlock, so people should know it's definitely not pressure treated wood. All this lumber was actually cut for the job. Hemlock is very good, known very well to hold a stain and to hold up in the elements for a long, long time. It does have a steel roof as well, which allows you to stay dry if it's raining out at all. You want to make sure you have baffles in the back because the baffles have to let the wind out. If you have a 60 mile an hour or 70 mile an hour wind gust, a structure like this would end up in your neighbor's yard for sure, and you don't want that to happen. The other thing I should also point out that this provides our shade. Our yard actually has very little shade, so by building this structure with a steel roof, this is our man-made shade, as we say.
So I think that the lesson that we take away from looking at Gordon's wonderful garden is that a garden is not just for working in. It's not even just for looking at. A garden is really for living in. Salute.
Cheers.